Hello and welcome to my Dark Souls a series in review, where I'm going to go ahead and look at the three different Dark Souls and try to talk about what I liked and disliked from each games, mainly focusing on gameplay because that's the main thing to get in the games. Gameplay and world design. I'm not really huge into music and stuff. They all have very great music, especially in certain boss fights, but I'm mainly focused on like what I enjoyed and how they compare to each other, especially playing one after another and seeing all the changes that they tried to make in the series. So that would put first up Dark Souls 1, which I did play on the Prepare to Die edition, which I recommend nobody does. I played on the Prepare to Die edition. I don't know how to do mods, so I dealt with the issues that come with the Prepare to Die edition, like frame rate and resolution being all messed up, and it's just not fun. It's not fun to figure out how to make that work. I know all my footage is remastered, but I realized when I wanted to make this that I'm not going to go back through Prepare to Die edition to try and get footage. I'll just capture some remastered for Dark Souls 1. Um, Overall, I enjoyed the game. I do think it's a bit easier than I think other Souls games, specifically being someone from Bloodborne and Demon Souls. I did find a lot of the bosses to be pretty easy. They do have some really good and well designed bosses later in the game, especially the DLC. I think the final boss there was a ton of enjoyment and a ton of fun and a challenge that gets easier if it rewards you for trying to find hidden secrets. But then it did have some bosses I didn't like where they just require you to sit there and shield check them, where you hold a shield and then you tap the attack button. So once your shield, or once you're done with the shield delay, you attack. And that was the only way for me to fight him, and I found it very annoying. That's Knight Artorias. I know a lot of people like Knight Artorias' fight, but I feel like it was done a lot better in later games, especially like Sir Alan from Dark Souls 2, I think was a much better example of how to do Knight Artorias. But overall, the game was very, very enjoyable for me, and I got a lot of fun, especially exploring the world, because unlike the other two, this world is so much more interconnected. While the other ones sort of feel like there's a hub that lots of paths lead off, and they lead to all these different areas, the first one is literally interconnected in every which way you can think is possible, which makes it so insanely fun to run around the world trying to figure it out and trying to explore it and just not knowing where you're going to pop up, whether it's popping up from Blighttown to the Firelink Shrine or popping up from, oh, I ran out of an example there. I guess how the giant, I don't remember the name, it's the giant forest area connects back to also to the first area, the Undead Burg and stuff like that. There's just tons of connections, and then finding secret paths to go to different areas. There's even a whole area I missed, which was like the Dragon Graveyard. I was looking at videos and like, this area is great. I never went there, never discovered it. So there's plenty more to discover in the game. As for bosses, they're, like I said, relatively fairly balanced and enjoyable. And I think that's all you can ask for from a Dark Souls, and it shows how the series became such an instant classic for some people, because even I have just enjoyed re-rolling new characters and trying out different goofy builds and messing around with the first bosses and having a good time. So after Dark Souls 1, you sort of head into the black sheep of the entire series, which is actually what I'm watching gameplay of right now, which is Dark Souls 2. I really enjoy Dark Souls 2, honestly. There are some aspects that I think they really improved from Dark Souls 1. I think overall combat became better, and I definitely think that they improved the game's weapons and armor. There are some really good armor sets in Dark Souls 1, but I feel like they're very, very limited, while Dark Souls 2 pretty much decided that every enemy in the game can drop their armor if it's a humanoid enemy, and you can go ahead and use it. It does make it more annoying because all armor is pretty much based on drops from enemies, so you're not going to just pick up some armor from dead bodies like you will in 1 and 3, but the amount of weapons and armor that makes the game have is crazy and tons of fun. Where this game falls weaker than Dark Souls 1 and 3, definitely though, is an oversaturation of bosses. They just decided that throwing more bosses must make a good game, and ending the game with 41 total bosses when the other games end around 24-ish is nuts. And I don't think anyone wants to have to go through that trek to try and beat a game. And it's the one thing that makes me not want to touch 2 as much, is because while I enjoy 2, having to fight through 41 bosses is just not something I want to do, especially when half the bosses just feel like glorified enemies. Now, another thing the series tried to do that really didn't work with the Dark Souls 2 is they added an ability that determines your Estus drinking speed and the dodge and vulnerability frames, and it didn't work. And it makes a lot of people complain about the fact that there's bad hitboxes in this game. Well, I think it's less about bad hitboxes, and it's more that people don't know that stat controls so many important elements. Along with that, the game loves to ambush you. It lives up to its prepare to die name because it wants to be like, ha ha ha, we got you, you got tricked. It just makes it a little not fun sometimes. You're just like, come on, game, I'm just trying to get through this area. You can beat me up with like hard enemies, like Dark Souls 1 with like those crystal golems. They can be a pain sometimes, but they're like, no, we're going to throw this really easy enemy, but we're going to throw 6 of them at you just because you walked in the wrong room. Or while they tried to be unique, they had an enemy called the Pursuer that they just threw in your face quite a few times. But overall, I thought it was a somewhat of an improvement over 1, but also a few steps back in certain areas. And also seeing as this wasn't made by Miyazaki, I guess that's why they may have gotten lost in certain aspects, especially in their way of trying to make the difficulty of the game and getting a little too obsessed with that. But finally, we're going to end with the third game, which by hands down is my favorite. The game is gorgeous, and it took a lot of the things from 1 and 2 and did a lot to pretty much perfect the Dark Souls formula, and it's a great bookend to the entirety of that series. Who knows if they'll decide to continue Souls with the different name? Maybe they'll make a Demon Souls 2, who knows? But as far as the final DLC in Dark Souls 3 seems, it seems very finite and a conclusion to the entirety of the series. Easily the best addition to this one was special weapon abilities. So each weapon has a special type of attack that takes up the game's mana resource, and it just makes it fun. And I spent so many hours using one of the first bosses, the Abyss Watcher's weapon, because that magic attack is just fun. There's no other way to put it. It's so much enjoyment out of the crazy stuff you can do with weapons in that game, not to mention how many weapons there are in the game, because just like Dark Souls 2, they flooded the game with armor types, weapon types. You can just make your character anything that you want in this game, and it really gives you a good sense of variety and makes it fun for you to reset and try different builds, from going from a knight to a wizard to a fire mage to naked dude with greatsword. I don't know, whatever you find enjoyable, you can get definitely in Dark Souls 3, along with a much better balance of bosses. It's definitely the best for newcomers to the series because of how it ramps up its difficulty. It has some of the hardest bosses in the game, hands down, but these bosses are brought to you near the end, while Dark Souls 1 has one of the hardest bosses in the game near the beginning, Capra Demon, because it's an ambush. You're not prepared for it, and unless you're a sword and shield dude with heavy armor, you're going to get destroyed very early. Well, this game waits till about halfway through it to introduce you to Pontiff Sullivan, who's going to kick your ass a couple times before you get used to being able to fight him and being able to deal with him. But that develops you as a Dark Souls player and would add endless enjoyment to you playing the rest of the series and the amount of fun you can have and that is to be had. But overall, I think I spanned a lot of categories of Dark Souls play too. I tried to broaden my horizons. So as you saw in some of the footage in Dark Souls 2, I played a faith build and played a creepy looking priest dude. In Dark Souls 3, I played an archer, which I abandoned halfway through because, look, you can only be so much of an archer in Dark Souls. So I just became like an archer with a rapier, and that was it. In Dark Souls 1, since I'm using remastered footage, just imagine the Barbarian class, the base class. I used that the entirety of the game. And I found it to be tons of fun. This series is really enjoyable altogether. All of them are worth a play, especially if you enjoy their types of games. I would say, understand that if you play Dark Souls 2, it's going to be a trick. It's going to take you a bit to be able to get through the entirety of the game. There's so many bosses, but luckily, once you max up some adaptability, get it to about 26, you won't be dealing with too many frame issues, and you can just sit there chunking your way through the bosses. I even think once you get to the proper adaptability score, the game comes a little bit more easy because you have more iframes and you drink Estus faster, and there is other healing, so you can get some enjoyment. And then Dark Souls 1 is just, it's like playing a Mario 64 style game. It's just classic. It's just the defining game of the series. It's great that we have the remaster to let people get in and not have some of the clunkiness that the first one had, or the original version of it had. It did start out with some of that, but it feels much better than Prepare to Die Edition does, hands down. And overall, I really enjoyed this series. I'll tell you, I was done with Dark Souls though after playing all three in a row. I'm excited for the Demon Souls remake coming out on PS5. That was the first game I ever played, losing half your health and get your world getting darker and stuff, all because of you're dying. It's just great. It's abusive, but it's also very enjoyable. It's a very cool world. And then, of course, when we get the George R. R. Martin game that they're bringing out, there's just a lot of good stuff coming up for a Dark Souls fan. It does suck to know that the series is sort of over, and I hope that they just create maybe something else that's this medieval-ish themed. But overall, this is a great series. I don't think there's necessarily a bad one in it. Yes, people dislike 2, but it does not deserve some of the hate it gets. It's not terrible. It just has its faults that all three of the games have. Maybe not 3. I think 3 is relatively strong. I think it's a perfect example of how it should be done. But overall, it's a great series. It's worth a play. And other than that, I hope you have a good one. And thanks for stopping in and listening to me ramble about what I thought of this series after playing it. It was tons of fun, tons of rage. I hit my desk quite a bit. Might have messed up my PlayStation 2 controller, who knows. But, as they say, get good. I think I've gotten relatively good. But other than that, have a good one.